David won't be here tonight. His wife Jane had surgery on her ankle this morning.
So where's that other pretend attorney?
Well, she's been deleted as deputy. Some of the city council are unhappy with JD bringing all these people from the deputy positions, so she got moved back to prosecutor.
Really?
Which I didn't like, but she was good.
I haven't taught her. I don't go to. She's in my Sunday school class, but we don't have Bethany since the first week.
You guys ready?
Well, she's very confident. There was a conflict between her and the mayor.
I'd like to welcome everyone this evening to the City of Bethany Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for February 15th, 2018. I would also like to welcome Ms. Amanda McClellan, our new Director of Planning and Community Development. She's with us here tonight. Commissioner Couch, would you give us our invocation, please?
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this outstanding day. Thank you for the blessings that you give in each and every one of us. Help us to listen as a city body and help us to move the city forward. Thank you for everything. Amen.
Amen. If you would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item on our agenda this evening is the approval of the minutes of the meeting for February 1, 2018. Is there any discussion? Any comments or corrections? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Please vote. Thank you. For those of you in the audience, the Planning and Zoning Commission is a recommending body to the City Council for the City of Bethany. The City Council can accept, reject, or modify any recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission. If anyone comes up tonight to speak at the podium, each time you come up, if you will, announce for the record who you are and who you represent so that the record's clear. Thank you. We have two items on our agenda this evening. The first item is PC 18-2. This is a request by the for the Planning and Zoning Commission to make a recommendation on the playground equipment and gazebo in conjunction with the construction of the new Bethany Library building site. This is a matter that was continued from the February 1st, 2018 hearing. Ms. Barker?
There we go.
Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, we are here tonight to kind of come back with the playground equipment for the library. They did make the adjustments as requested from the Planning Commission of having the reading area moved to the south of the playground area. Also was going to let you know that there's a little bit of an addition on there as far as the approval of the site plan or recommending of the approval of the site plan. That staff asked that is contingent upon their only issues being with the site plan being the equipment that's currently in the setback and with the driveway approach that's off of College. So just to kind of keep that in mind as well, that's what staff is asking for presently. Kind of run through the presentation real quick. You'll see it's nothing much has changed other than the playground equipment that's moved kind of there between the trees on the south end of the playground. The reading area was moved. And you see there, the only thing that's remaining in the setback, there's a close-up picture in a little bit, but there's a little bit of a couple shade structures and some, I believe that's a swing set type of structure. And then here's where on the east side of the part of the driveway that there's the kind of approach goes on to College, which actually goes on to the property to the south, but the city does own that property. There's a close-up of where the structure is going to be the reading area. And there you can see the close-up of what's remaining in the setback currently. And the way it is right now, with the equipment being in the setback and the driveway exiting onto another piece of property, staff is unable to approve the site plan, which is why we're asking recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission. And there's the driveway there. So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. And also, Todd Oberding is here with the library as well that can answer further questions.
With regard to the items in the setback, are there any safety concerns?
Staff does not have any safety concerns with that, no.
And with regard to the curvature or the corner on the entryway, do you see that as being a safety problem or any kind of a real issue other than it's just outside of what we would normally allow?
That's correct.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Ms. Parker?
The setback starts where?
There you can kind of see it's a 25-foot setback. So,
Yes.
and then you have the 10-foot right away.
Where does it begin? Is it the line of fence,
I
or
believe
is it
it
further?
starts at the curb line, I believe. and goes
Okay,
to
where is the curb
Where-
line?
property line. I'm sorry, it's property line.
Okay,
Um,
and the property line is where the fence is?
that would be my guess, yes, based on what I'm seeing on the drawing, yes.
Okay, I thought it started at the curb, but, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions? Would you like to hear from the applicant? Would you like to hear from the applicant?
If they want to speak.
Okay. Does the applicant wish to speak? Are there any questions? Any other discussion? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the plan and take whatever exception there is to the, I don't mean exception, what do I mean? Inclusion of the items that are beyond the setback.
I'll
And-
second that.
Well, one other item, though, we have the
The
driveway
driveway.
entryway.
Oh,
Um,
I forgot about that.
So with those two items,
Yeah, we can
I'm sorry.
accept that.
That's fine.
Maybe you're saying-
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Mr.
Ms.
Chair,
Parker. Yes,
You
sir.
might make a note to the audience that this will be going to the city council on February 20th. It's a faster track than normal.
Okay. For anyone in the audience who didn't hear that, this matter will be heard. This is the playground equipment and gazebo. This will be heard by the city council on February 20th, which is a shortened version, if you will, of the noticing period that you would normally see. Thank you, Commissioner. The second item on our agenda tonight is PC 18-01. This is to consider a request by SRB Engineering applicant and Debbie Strucker, the property owner, to rezone 4308 North Rockwell Avenue from CG Commercial General to a PUD, which is a planned unit development. Ms. Barker?
This is the rezoning application. We heard the conceptual hearing probably, about a month ago or so at this, and there were several issues that was brought up, and the applicant went back and made some alterations to their plans and then brought them back for the official rezoning process. Just to be clear, this is just for the rezoning of the property. This isn't for any other issues as far as like drainage or anything that can be looked at a staff level whenever should this be approved. The changes that were done on the application was it's 8 dwelling units instead of 9. There was an addition of a dog park area. There is a centralized trash pickup area that was noted, and there's a turnaround area on the east side of the property. Some additional parking was added. The 6-foot sidewalk was also added, and the parallel parking area was removed. So that's kind of some changes that you may have seen. Some of the details of the property, it is currently zoned CG. They are asking for a PUD. The surrounding zoning includes commercial, general, and single-family residential. The property is just under an acre, and there is currently no structures on the property, and they are looking at having 8 detached single-family dwelling units on the property. Water and sewer, there's water, 8-inch water line along Rockwell, and then there's also there's sanitary sewer on the north and south property lines. And of course, Rockwell is a 4-lane major thoroughfare. The PUD ordinance kind of just allows for, the way it's written right now, is intended to kind of provide some flexibility for development that we normally wouldn't see within the current zoning regulations. Typically, when you hear of a PUD, it's typically more of an overlay type of district rather than a rezoning process, but that is not how it's currently handled in Bethany. And then also the ordinance does state that the PUD request shall conform to the policies and goals of the comprehensive plan. So we do want to keep that in mind as we move forward. Here's a zoning map showing you the surrounding zoning. Kind of an aerial photo of what's around the area currently. The comprehensive plan does consider this within the eastern neighborhood area, meaning that it's more of a single-family area rather than any sort of mixed use. It's not in any of the 6 districts that's called within the comprehensive plan. Within those six districts is where they talk about the missing middle homes being the mixed use, that type of development scheme. Some action items that was included in there is increased code enforcement, enhance through volunteer groups and things like that to kind of clean up some of the properties, incentivize through grants and loans, things like that. As I stated, the discussion of the missing middle was primarily in the 6 districts that's currently on the comprehensive plan. And this area again is not within those areas. Here's those areas there. You can see where the CBD area is just to the kind of south of the property, and then to the north is the other zone that's the 2 closest to it. And then the targeted district map, you can also see that a little more clear that the star there is where the property is, and that is clearly not within the districts. The layout that they are calling for, this is kind of what you see here. You can see where they added some additional parking on each of the dwelling units, the dog park, and then the turnaround area as well. Here's the example floor plan that they are calling for. Some interior type of design elements. This is the entry landscape example that they will probably go more details of than what I will at this point. They did do an auto turn analysis for vehicle parking, so they shows that the vehicle can get in and out relatively easily and turn around. They also did the same for truck and garbage truck pickup as well. There shows the water line and the sewer lines. To kind of get to staff concerns of the PUD, again, the ordinance states that the PUD shall conform with the comprehensive plan. As I stated, the property is not located within the 6 targeted districts. Altering uses and densities in the established residential areas is not one of the goals of the comprehensive plan the way it is written currently. And also to keep in mind, during the comprehensive plan meetings, those that served on the steering committee will remember that there was lots of discussion of no further rental property, which this is going to be all on one lot and was discussed as being rental property. The residents clearly stated throughout the process that they did not want to see further rental property. They wanted to see more home ownership property, and that's also stated within the comprehensive plan as well. The comprehensive plan also discusses at length of having more commercial areas for to bring in more tax revenue for the city and things like that, and this is essentially taking a commercial zone to a residential district. And then also within the design statement, it talks about a residential multifamily, and this is clearly, as discussed, being a zone within the comprehensive plan, looking at being single-family residential, but despite it being a commercial general zone. The response that we've gotten from the citizens as of tonight, we have 3 letters of support for the project. I received a phone call from a Miss Julie, I'm going to mispronounce this, I apologize, Rozapel, and her daughter Grace Garrett. They own and live at 7016 Northwest 43rd. She called me on the 13th of February stating that she wanted what was best for the community and did not feel that changing a property from commercial to residential was what was best for the community. She had some safety concerns with the development, just being more rental property and things like that. And she felt that, again, this is more suited for a commercial type of use rather than residential. And one other factor, as you all have been aware, we've done a Ward 2 survey that was done as part of a overlay district that was being looked at. And this graph here just shows, one of the questions was the importance of having townhomes or condos within the area. And you can see that nearly 50% of the people that responded out of, I believe, nearly 300 respondents stated that they did not want that it was not important to have townhomes and homes and condos nearby. Several comments that were on the survey included that they did not want rental property. They did not want anything that would, they did not want any sort of multifamily nearby either. So that is pretty much all that we have at this point. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them, and the applicant is also here if you have questions for them.
Are there any questions for Ms. Parker?
Does the garbage truck simulate a fire truck?
That would be a question for the applicant. I'm not
Okay.
sure how they did their analysis.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Would the applicant like to be heard?
Thank you. I'm Mark Long with Smith Roberts Balderschweiler. We're the representative for the applicant, Timber Ridge Estates LLC. With me tonight is Mr. Jason Johnson, who is a partner in the development company, and he'll be assisting in answering questions and discussing it.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Excuse me. We prepared a brief presentation. We'll go through it. We can then answer any other further questions that you have. Again, the design statement, I won't spend any time on these slides. And as we discussed, after the conceptual hearing, we went back and we reduced the number of single-family dwelling units from 9 to 8 per the comments that were received both from the public and from the Planning Commission itself. We looked at and evaluated the parking scenarios within that. Each of these dwellings does have a garage attached with a carport for one space, we went back and added an additional parking space. So each of the 8 dwellings has 3 parking spaces, which is a total of 24, which exceeds the city requirement for parking for a single family unit, such as this, which only requires 2. At the front entry, we've got detention pond. As they discussed, this is in anticipation that we will have to have on-site detention in order to be able to address the stormwater runoff and be able to tie into the undersized storm sewer that is on Rockwell. But these 2 detention ponds that are shown in the front in yellow will be able to accomplish that and be able to not impact the already stressed stormwater drainage system. We went in and eliminated some common visitor parking that was in the center drive. That now is a greenbelt area. Will be just grass landscaped area. The turnaround was improved by having the 9th unit eliminated. So on the east side of the development, to the top, to the north east corner, you have a centralized garbage pickup location, and then you have in the southeast corner an amenity that was added as a dog park for the residents within the actual development itself. There will not be public access from the alleyway. There's no real way for the rest of the neighborhood to access this dog park because there's other residential units that are wrapped completely around this development unit to the east and to the southeast. To answer your question while we're on this drawing, as far as lanes and widths, yes. And I'll pull up a slide and we can show that. We did the auto turn analysis not only for a garbage truck, but also for a fire truck. So in the auto turn analysis, it will be able to allow the fire trucks to enter in on to either side of that boulevard look, and then they'll be able to back up or down in the turnaround area to the east, and that way they'll be able to access all the properties through that. We also did the auto turn because there was concern at the conceptual hearing that cars could not even turn around, and so that was shown in the applicant, and you can see, or the application, you can see the auto turn analysis for that as well. This is on top of an aerial photo just showing how the single family dwelling units will lay in. And as you look around the property, it is surrounded. Our opinion as the applicant is that this is a residential neighborhood, and it is surrounded by primarily residential property. There is one commercial piece to the south and to the west of this property, but the rest is actively occupied residential properties. This is the way that property has looked since roughly the early 1990s, when an existing farmhouse and some other outstructures were removed at that time. Apparently they may have been dilapidated and were forced to be removed at that time. This is an example of the farmhouse style. This is a modification. It's a concept in a planning area of a tiny home. It's a small home, has 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, a family little den area office, has a carport attached with a look, and you can see the style as far as the color board. Those are in the back and was in the application. This is a product that we feel like will meet some of the goals of the comprehensive plan, and I'll refer to that in a moment when we go back through that. Exhibit E is just re-emphasizing where the location is on the zoning. From the comprehensive plan 2030, this is Exhibit F. This is showing a housing inventory that was done as part of the comprehensive plan process. As you can see, highlighted, the subject property there is in the box. Surrounded by it is the eastern neighborhood, the Bethany district neighborhood. What we're contending that this does meet the goal of the comprehensive plan is that it is providing a housing unit in an otherwise declining or distressed neighborhood, which was stated in the comprehensive plan. Everything in yellow, orange, and red, as you can see, is in a declining state. and predominantly the eastern neighborhood and the Bethany district neighborhood is in that condition. We feel like this will be a catalyst for other housing development and housing starts within not only this neighborhood but the city of Bethany. I think it's important to add here that last year there were four building permits pulled for housing for single-family homes in the city of Bethany in the past year, 2017. In 6 months, this development, if approved, would double that in housing starts for the city of Bethany. This is a proposed landscape entry. This entry is off of another development that this same developer has used. It's not exactly the way it will look, but it will be fit within that area. And ironically, if you look on Rockwell to the north, just 100 to 200 feet north of this property, there are homes that were allowed to be built and permitted by the city within the last few years that actually meet some of this architectural standards. So again, that gets back to some of the things where we feel like there's conflicting approvals by the city and by the Planning Commission in the past. This is a property detail sheet, and essentially what you're looking at is you're looking at the historical property tax value. If you look in the far right corner of that column, since the year 2000, the average tax bill on this has been $408. In 2016, the property was sold from the previous owner to an individual, the current owner, with the intent of trying to develop a commercial piece of property. Upon that sale, the property taxes doubled based on the sale price, and then now it is now under contract and has been sold to the new developer. Now, the business case for this application, which is what we're asking you to look at, as well as looking at, we want to emphasize that we respectfully decline to agree that this project does not meet the goals of the comprehensive plan, and we'll go through a few examples of where the Bethany 2030 comprehensive plan has conflicting statements in it and there are gaps. And so we feel like the business case for this project is the historic use of this property from 1911 until the early 2000s was a farmhouse, was dilapidated, and was not used. It sat vacant and was then demolished. The historical property taxes have been less than $800 per year now. Due to the sale that occurred in 2016, they doubled, and now will probably increase based on the sale that already occurred this year when the developer closed on this property. The land cost for this project is projected to be $115,000. Constructing 8 units will equate to about $1 million in land plus construction and development costs. This will result in a development that provides 8 units that will have a proposed market value of approximately $175,000 per single family dwelling unit. This is an overall value roughly projected to be at completion of $1.5 million that this applicant and developer is willing to come and spend in a distressed neighborhood in the east side of Bethany. The city has issued only 4 building permits, as I stated, last year for housing, and that development, if this is approved, would then double that number in the next 6 months. The ratio of owner-occupied versus rental properties in the surrounding notification areas is as follows. Out of 50 total properties, there are 11 owner-occupied and 39 renter-occupied. So the issue of increasing or decreasing and what the focus of rental, you have rental properties already. They are there, and they are in a distressed state. It's not a housing product like what this development is proposing. And so we feel like this is a very marketable product. At this time, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to point out a few items that we feel like are important to note. On page 4 of the Bethany 2030 Comprehensive Plan, there's a copy of the 1972 Comprehensive Plan. That was a proposed future land use plan back in 1972. On that plan, this subject property was shown as residential. Obviously, in the 1980s, 90s, there was a period of time without records we don't know, but then this was converted to commercial. Our issue is that the comprehensive plan Bethany 2030 does not have a future land use plan. There is a gap that is missing. You have a targeted strategy map, but you do not have a 2030 future land use plan. And so to say that this is not consistent with that, we do object to that. On page 5, again, it looks at what the existing land use is, and you can see on page 5, this is shown as a commercial property. That way you can see the difference between that. On page 8, Bethany is not competing effectively with its neighboring cities. Just as businesses compete, so do cities, and other cities are competing for strong households, strong businesses. They compete with schools, neighborhood, quality, parks, local shopping, and services. We feel like that on page 8, item number 4, this does accomplish a goal as far as being able to bring strong households into this neighborhood. On page 9, it talks about part 6, a lack of a target market area. It says that Bethany's comprehensive 2030 plan says to target young families and middle-aged families to the tune of about 65 to 71%. This housing product meets that because it's 2 bedrooms, 2 bath with an enclosed garage structure. On page 15 of the comprehensive plan, there is a comprehensive plan strategy map, figure 3-1. Essentially, it shows that in this strategy map, there is a gap between the strategy that was identified along Rockwell Avenue. There was a strategy area for commercial development, mixed use within the central business district. There was a strategy developed north to the airport area around 50th that stopped at 47th. But from 47th up to 42nd Street, there is a gap. There's no strategy identified. However, in this strategy map, this subject property is shown as residential. On page 16, objectives and looking at exploring housing strategies, this developer and applicant has come up with an innovative product that is being done in Oklahoma City off of Classen Avenue, a small tiny home development where the city of Oklahoma City had to wrestle with the same things that this planning commission and the city council have to here. They had to decide how are they going to allow a new type of housing product in whenever their current ordinances and their comprehensive plan did not exactly match up with what was being proposed. In the city of Oklahoma City, they were able to get over that hurdle and have approved that Classen 29 home development project. Last but not least, there was a talk about how this should be possibly platted or show individual lot ownership. Currently, right now, we have issues in being able to do that because, number one, we don't have a mechanism for being able to go through and with the current zoning codes on page 22, it states the zoning codes are limited in permitted housing types for this type of unit. Because we're looking at a single developer owned, we have to fall under the RM category. But I want to emphasize, this is single family home dwellings. And in the Bethany Public School support letter, that is why they were interested in supporting it, because it did encourage small single family home development. Last, on page 36, where it discussed, and in the staff recommendation, it discussed this as a mixed-use development. We're not looking at providing this as a mixed-use development. This applicant feels like there are better suited areas for some type of commercial development. The applicant has entered into a contract for the property subject at the corner of 42nd and Rockwell, which is currently an abandoned car wash detail shop attached to a vacant yard, and then there's a residential home. We feel like that Northwest 42nd and Rockwell, that area is much more conducive to a commercial development, and then would be able to support this the residential housetops that we would be putting in this development would actually encourage the success of that commercial development. With that, I think we've ended our presentation, and we can certainly, between Mr. Johnson and myself, answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Your questions for the applicant?
I have a few questions. I understood you to say they own this property? I thought it was under contract.
Excuse me, this property subject is under contract.
Okay, so that's a gap in your presentation. You mentioned that there have been 4 home building permits. Those were individual houses on individual lots. 29th and Classen, those are owner occupied, platted. They are not a lump sum thing. I might address the items in Drew's letter from the school. Additional tax revenue for the school district. If this is $1.5 million, then the taxes would be roughly $17,000 a year. The school district gets about 58%, so they get $9,000 or so a year. Valuation for future bond issues would be based upon that. However, if it's commercial, the ad valorem taxes are the same. The bond issue would be the same. The only difference would be whether or not this qualifies in the mind of the public, whether this is a high-quality rental opportunity. I'm not aware of any shortfall of people trying to get their students into the Bethany schools. But I have one other question that I didn't hear answered. Since this is a commercial venture, not for sale, it's multiple residents on one lot, have you addressed the concerns of complying with the requirement for landscape and facades?
Yeah, we will meet all landscape requirements by the city.
Have you done a test to see if you have enough green space to do those?
Yes, we've done the calculation.
Okay. You didn't bother to provide one for us?
No, we did not provide that for you at this time. We're going to do that as part of the site development process. Yep. Go ahead.
Mr. Carlson, as a landowner, as a property owner, you also will know this. I know you're stuck on it being one unit, but if we broke it up and we sold it as individual units, there is no guarantee that an investor won't come in and buy that unit and rent it to whoever they want. And so then you would have 8 rental units along there being taken care of by 8 different people. And if you drive around that neighborhood right now and you go just 8 houses in a row, I bet you see about 7 different property types in there.
Well, you know, I have no doubt that you'll take care of it, but I have no doubt you're considering this, as you have said before, as your retirement vehicle. And if something were to happen, you decide to sell it to someone else, there's no guarantee they're going to give it the same level of care that you are.
You're absolutely correct, but I hope I hold it as long as you've held your property, sir.
Well, I'm not interested in holding my property forever. If this were 8 individual pieces, then you would have the pressure of 8 people looking at the other to make sure they kept the property up.
So what you're saying is you want 8 different pressures of people keeping their property up. We're bringing $1.5 million into this neighborhood, bringing that property value up. I think we're doing a really good job because there's nothing over there worth even close to that.
Well, I don't argue that, but I'm saying give 8 people the opportunity to enjoy home ownership. One of the issues that Mark is well aware of in many of the discussions in the comprehensive plan was the lack of home ownership in this area. Dr. Kent Schellenberger said one of his greatest frustrations in being the superintendent in this school district was that people would move in, either buy a temporary house or rent, and then when their kids were out of school, they were gone. They abandoned the neighborhood.
And while that was a statement made, does this planning commission, does the city council, does this developer have any control over that? We don't. What we can control is bringing a product that we feel like is going to be market driven, that will increase the value within the eastern neighborhood area, and will actually provide a stimulus for rebuilding and doing block type development. Because in the comprehensive plan, it said that the city would look to do block type revitalization. That meets one of these goals in this development. Now, as far as the question about commercial development, we can leave this property. How well has that worked for you for the last 25 years for this parcel being commercial? And with the emphasis on businesses and commercial, and we do a lot of commercial development as well. Your Northwest 39th Street Route 66 corridor in downtown CBD is vital and ripe for development. Northwest 23rd has a potential for commercial development and numerous amounts of vacant property. Council Road was listed in here as a targeted commercial district. This piece of Rockwell, by making this leap forward, you're going to convert something into a housing product that will improve the neighborhood. However, if you want to wait for a commercial activity to happen, 2 years ago, the property owner that currently owns it tried to venture into a commercial activity and could not make the math pencil out. This product is going to bring $1.5 million of reinvestment into Bethany, and we'll be able to add rooftops that will add households that will eventually indirectly contribute to the sales tax that you're looking for from a commercial standpoint.
I, for one, am ready to wait, because once the sales tax opportunity is passed and this becomes residential, that sales tax revenue is gone forever.
Okay, so this slide right here, this is 150 feet away from this development. The city of Bethany has issued up in the upper left-hand corner, that is a total new remodel of a house to the north of this area. Across the street to the photo to the right in the upper right is a new home remodel, new construction home. You look down to the lower left, those are those two houses, and then the one on the far right. That is all within less than 100 feet starting from this property. So the city has already allowed a continuation and has encouraged, by allowing these homes to be built or remodeled, you're wanting to encourage better housing within the neighborhood area. What we're doing is we're just asking you to approve one more step to provide 8 more single-family homes that will be under a new type of product venture for the city of Bethany.
You're asking to put in 8 rental units versus these nice new owner-occupied houses.
I can promise you that our 8 units are better than 90% of the homes in the district. Will be nicer than 90%. They'll be higher rate. They'll be rented at $1,500 a month. That's on the high end of the district. And we again, if we built single or if we sold them, we cannot control who buys those. A person from California could come in and buy those 8 units in a very good school district, live in California, pay someone 10% property management, and rent those out. It happens every day, as you know.
You know, I'd rather take a chance of 1 in 10 than 1 in 1. I'd rather take a chance of 1 in 8.
You're exactly right. No, you're exactly right. You just said you'd rather take a chance of 1 in 1. We have one ownership here taking care of all the properties. One ownership you're exactly, I agree with you 100%. We have one ownership taking care of all the properties.
You know, the difference between the houses that you show up there on the screen is that those were never commercial. This property is commercial. It needs to stay that way to protect the future revenues for the city.
And we will make a further statement that this is a single piece of commercial property that went at one point in time, somewhere between 1972 and 1990s, went commercial around a sea of residential property. That's what we're contending.
Well, I don't remember ever seeing a for sale sign on it until recently.
All properties for sale, even if there's not a for sale sign on it, as you know.
Well, it seems to help when you put a for sale sign out, even for commercial realtors.
Sometimes.
Well, I think are there other technical questions you'd like to ask?
Not at this time. Thank you, Mark.
I have a scenario I'd like to run by. Assuming these properties are built, Mr. Johnson, for one reason or another, decides to sell them, then the scenario that you just gave us could occur. And because they're rental properties, you've now added 8 more to the 39 that you've already mentioned are concerned. The fact, I like the development, but I don't like where it is, and I don't like the fact that it's rental.
Well,
If you lived there, and there was some way we could force you to ball and chain to this property so that you would keep it up for the time you lived there, that would be one thing.
I have a
But you
third.
can sell it in the next week.
I have a 3rd and 5th grader in that school district, that great school district that's bringing the rental property there. I'm not going anywhere for a long time, God willing. Yes, but that is, and you're right, any property can be sold to anybody at this time.
Correct.
I hope I have this property forever. Our intentions are not to sell it, but even if we built one 8 times, we could say our intentions were to hold it and not sell it. But it doesn't matter that we're building 1 versus 8. We are doubling in one, and he said 6 months. We will walk into the city office and double the amount of permits that you guys had last year.
And what is the effect of that? I mean, in the sense of
Well,
why
let-
is that important?
Well, let me tell you why that's important. The mayor's here today, so I want to paraphrase why it's important. You guys want growth on 23rd, you want growth on 39th here, and you want growth out here by the lake. These people that, with that growth, they have to have new homes. They have to have places to live. Bethany's not providing that at this moment.
Okay. Do you have anything else to present?
Other than I feel like we start diving into what I feel like goes away from the merit of the application when we start talking rental versus home ownership into almost I feel like it's inappropriate almost from a policy level to be able to say whether you prefer or disallow rental property versus that.
Let me give you a real simple example. You take these 8 properties, and as they deteriorate, if they're not kept up, they're nothing different than an apartment complex with separate apartments instead of all being conjoined with common walls and so on and so forth. And I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it certainly could happen. And we already have enough issues with apartment complexes in Bethany.
And what we will respond to that is in the last 5 years, who's come to this wanting to do any type of residential development to the city? So you have to look at it from the merit of what Mr. Johnson said. You've got an ability in a highly desired district neighborhood for a school district that people want to provide a housing product that fits within the goals of your comprehensive plan. It fits into the demographics that you want. And that's something that whether people rent it or buy it, if they're in that demographic and if they're going to rent a unit that is valued at $175,000, they're going to have a higher average median income than half of the people that are in the surrounding area.
And just to add to that, Mr. Snyder, if we built 8 units across the city of Bethany, okay, just not on one lot, 8 units across the city of Bethany, we held all those 8 units in 15 years, or and we didn't lease them out, we didn't take care of them. There would be 8 units across the city that would deteriorate. Just because they're together doesn't mean that that you can call them an apartment, or you can call them, they're single family homes that we're going to upkeep to better than anything around there. Our rent depends on that.
Correct. My
Have you
point
looked-
is the difference between rental ownership or rental property and home ownership.
And we can't, even, again, Mr. Snyder, no disrespect, if I built 8 units across the city of Bethany and I put them out there to sell them, People could buy those 8 units and rent them out. We can't stop that.
Okay.
Where else in Bethany did you look to put this besides there?
As you know, we won't put it, at this moment, we will not put it anywhere outside of the school district. And I want to clarify something. That property on the corner that's zoned commercial that we're under contract, that is contingent on the approval and the building of this. We want to bring money to Bethany. We want to improve Bethany. We want to be a part of that. But the school district drives the rent in Bethany. Anywhere else in Bethany at this moment does not make sense for us.
So north of 50th won't work for you?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right, this is I'm sorry, do you have something?
No, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Commissioner, yeah, just I got another technical question, and then I'll probably follow up to what we've been talking about here. So originally you had, if I remember right, there were 2 different plans for the houses. Now we're down to just 1?
Correct. We said that we'd build that, just the one, I believe it's on the top of the slide.
Yeah, it's the one that's almost 1,200 square feet.
Correct. And we also said that in the last meeting, we still agree to this, that we'll only put 8 windows. Well, it said 9 at that number because we had 9, so we came back and took 1. There will only be 8 windows pointing outside of this development.
Okay, okay.
The 9th unit was back where we had to address all the turnaround issue for fire truck and garbage delivery.
Correct.
Which was actually a very good enhancement.
Yeah.
Which came from your comments.
Not to berate the subject of my colleagues here, but I guess the part I struggle with a little bit is, I know, Mr. Long, you were involved a lot in the comprehensive plan and all that stuff. And when you sat on this commission, you know, we had various things come up and whatnot. And it was, I think, somewhat unanimous, and I think something on your heart in particular about the major thoroughfares through the city. I mean, obviously 23rd Street, you know, 39th, Route 66, a big one, but also Rockwell, and we have the stuff on the around the lake, kind of looking at that as well. But I know you were very adamant about commercial, and like the chair here, I love the idea. But here again, it sits on the main thoroughfare. Now, are there holes in the comprehensive plan? Yes. I mean, it's kind of a work in progress, and you know, we spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to get it to where it is now. I guess that's the only part I struggle with is, you know, I remember your passion and your drive about getting, you know, commercial business in here and sticking to that on the major thoroughfares. And it, you know, I guess that's the part that I struggle with here. I understand the reasoning behind this. I mean, it's a good idea, and anywhere else, it probably wouldn't be too big an issue outside those major thoroughfares. I just think that's the part that, you know, we're looking at, and that's where a little bit of the struggle is on my
Well, and certainly I would love to respond to that. In many cases, I was opposed to some of the applicants that, when I sat on the planning commission, that were on Rockwell and Council. And they were on large tracts of land, and they wanted to have an addition for a shed or a barn or expand onto a yard of a house. However, those areas, if you look back at the notes, those were all in the targeted district or the commercial corridor areas. The other thing that I was very passionate about, because number one, I do live in the Bethany district neighborhood. Number two, I'm actually not ashamed to say that I rent a house in the Bethany district neighborhood. Number three, I chose to rent a house in order to keep my daughter in school as opposed to her losing a transfer. And so the concept of having a revitalized, block type development in a distressed neighborhood that I live in personally was also a passion of mine. And I think many from the vision plan and the city council initiative to do the vision plan in the Bethany district neighborhood is, how do we do something creative? How do we do something innovative? And how do we get something going in a neighborhood that is on the decline. You drive up and down, and I live in it every day. And this is something that I am passionate about because I believe that when I sat on the Planning Commission, we could do something about it. And I think tonight you have the opportunity to step out there and make a policy decision that says, hey, while this may not be commercial property and generate sales tax, it's going to bring rooftops that are going to bring family incomes in that are going to be higher than the median average, that are going to be able to spend some, and they're going to be in a district that people want to be in.
Can I add something to Mr. Carlson? Mr. Carlson said, I'm just going off of his numbers, it'll be around $9,000 per year to Bethany School. I'm not from Bethany, I'm from Western Oklahoma, but the people I've talked to, Bethany Schools has always been a good school. It's a great school right now. If we can give them $100,000 over the next 10 years, that's great. And God forbid anything happen to that school because my kids go there again. But if that school loses credibility, loses what it is now, we won't be here begging the city to spend $1.5 million. Oh, and on your commercial, Mark has looked at 0 fast food places will fit on that property, and again, and then if it's commercial, we put an office in there or something, and the office goes in there. There's no guarantee of commercial sales tax for the city of Bethany.
Well, many of the firms that we are chasing require a larger lot for their commercial, but I noticed that Napa Auto Parts has a pattern now that fits on 0.72 acres as a rule, and they have one over on Meridian that they've put in. And that's, for instance, one of the areas where we have retail sales tax leakage in Bethany, that if Mark were to want to buy a set of brake pads for his now retired Suburban, he would have to go to Oklahoma City to do it. So that sales tax leakage, you know.
Well, I think, again, it gets back to, yeah, it would be great to have commercial development. But right now with this applicant, you have a chance to be able to add some housing units and another adjacent property that is now under contract to get from a vacant detail car wash could be converted into a small strip center that would provide an amenity to the district neighborhood. So with that, we appreciate your time tonight.
I have another question for Mr. Johnson.
Yes, sir.
I was curious, what is your rental rate work out to on a square foot basis? Is it
I don't know if I can answer that on this project.
you said what, 1,550?
1,500 for basically 1,200 square feet on this
Yeah,
project.
that works out to about $1.29.
A little over 1%, yes.
Okay.
And that is, I mean, as you know, that's on the upper end.
Yeah. The reason I asked, I was curious because the Santelli Suites over here on, was it Asbury, which is the only multifamily location that I can find. It has the new granite stainless, and so granted it's a converted office type of thing, but their 5,400 feet are listed to rent at $3,900, which is 72 cents a foot. That's also in the Bethany School District.
That's a lot of square feet. So as you know, when the square foot goes up, that price will go down.
Well, but there are three units.
Rental income over in Bethany School District right now is, I've got a 900 square foot house that has granite, has the industrial beams that were brought in from out, redone wood floors, subway tile in it, and it rents for $1,000, and that's 2 bedroom, 1 bath at 900 square feet.
Yeah.
So we're at $1,500. We're not far off. We think.
I was just curious about
Yeah.
the business model. But
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to be heard?
Hello, I'm Kathy Holloway. I live at 4311 North Beaver. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
Welcome, Ms. Holloway.
Thank you. I am a homeowner at 4311 North Beaver. I would just like to make the statement that I would rather this be a single-family residential owner-occupied. I'm really not for apartments. I oppose the two-story also in the fact that that invades our open area feel. Whenever you have two-story in your backyard, you go out in your backyard, and also your lighting, it blocks the light. You just kind of feel like you're down in a box or down in a cave. I oppose apartments because they are not owner occupied. I oppose apartments because this will cause a degrading of the neighborhood. It was mentioned that there's 50 homes, most of them rentals. This just supports that the more rentals that come into an area, more homes become rental. I've lived at 4311 North Beaver since 1977, and so I've seen a lot of changes there. I've seen what owner-occupied versus rental can do to a neighborhood. If you have homes that are owner-occupied, it encourages more home ownership and with better groomed homes. And you can see in the area and in Ward 2 for quite some time now, and some of these homes have been discussed this evening, homes that are being built that are very nice, and the area is on the upswing. So I really hate to see that be squelched by having apartments come in. I have some other things that I could speak of, but at this time I won't do that. I know this gentleman is again trying to have his retirement, and I don't want to begrudge him of that, but I would please ask you to vote no on these apartments. I humbly ask you to consider to vote no. Because if these go in, I believe that it will set back the great trend of the owner-occupied, very nice, single-family homes that are on the upswing now. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard?
Hello, my name is Tony Ramos.
Welcome,
I-
Mr. Ramos.
I went to school here at Bethany. I graduated. When it was time for me to become a homeowner, I wanted to become a homeowner in Bethany, but I couldn't afford what the houses cost more outside of the district. They're like $40,000, $50,000 less for the same square footage. I purchased a home outside of the school district. I now have kids. I've tried to get them into the school district. I now, as a homeowner, am renting a house in the Bethany School District and renting my personal home to somebody else just so I can get my kids into the school. If something like this would come up, my kids would be living in a nicer area. Instead of a house that someone doesn't care about, all they care about is the income. It's a rundown rental. I think something like this would give us the benefit, people like me that can't afford the house in the school district, to live in something a lot nicer. I wouldn't have to worry about mowing. I'd get more time with my kids, homework, and everything would be taken care of. And it'd be a nice area for me to live in. you're looking at somebody that has an opportunity to bring something to the city just because it's not commercialized. They have the opportunity to add value. Someone like me would love that opportunity because I wouldn't have to live in something that's run down. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Bill Holloway. I live at 4311 North Beaver also. I believe if you look at some of the values of the homes in the area, they're on up there a little ways thanks to our Oklahoma Tax Commission. Also, I have two questions. Number one, I don't quite understand. I mean, I like the concept of the new homes. How can they sell this property? I thought there was a law that said they could not sell the property individually as it stands right now. So I was kind of wondering about that question.
Well, the individual properties are not for sale.
Okay, then why do they keep saying they're for sale?
They're for rent.
Okay, so let's, to me, to make that clear, this is rental property.
Correct.
It is not individual homeowner property, and it probably never will be. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Because there's
Whoever owns it would have to own the whole thing.
so there is a most likely no way that this property can be sold individually.
No, not in my understanding.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay, well, I just didn't understand why it keeps coming up that it's going to be sold individually, and it cannot be.
Well, the whole thing could be sold.
The whole unit, right.
It's
Okay.
I believe it's 0.8 acres.
Okay.
And so the whole 0.8 acres could transfer from one owner to another. So if you owned it, I could buy it from you,
Right.
and I could sell it to someone else.
In total.
In total, all 8 units.
Okay. So it is rental property,
Correct.
period.
Correct.
Okay. That's just clear for myself. Also, I'm not sure that this is a important question, but did all the questions from last meeting get answered about drainage, fencing around the property, the fact that the property is approximately 2 feet higher than property north of it?
Those matters would be taken up when and if a site plan was proposed. The only question before us tonight is whether we should approve a change in the
Oh.
zoning
Okay. Okay. Well,
from the commercial to the PUD.
and then those other things will have to be issued after they get the PUD.
Correct.
Super. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard? Is there any discussion here? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I would make a motion that we deny the application since this does not conform to the spirit or letter of the comprehensive plan and would rob the city of the opportunity for sales tax potential from the current zoning.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please vote. Okay, I read that to be six versus 3. Ron, is yours not working? No, it's okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 versus 2. Is that what I get?
Oh, he's voting.
can't be, there's only
But for some reason Sarah's is on. Stuck? Sayer.
Sayers,
I'm sorry.
okay, Ethel Sayers is on. Okay, now that makes sense.
Technology at work.
Well, she voted to approve the minutes too. 5-3.
Okay.
That will be the recommendation of the P and Z to the.
We still got one extra.
Okay. Clemmer's here, Peck is here, Holman's here, Sayer's here.
Mr. Long's voting for it.
There
I
we
think
go.
the city council
No
forgot
fair,
to turn
Mark.
off their dealings.
4-3.
Mhm.
That's right, 7-0.
That will be the recommendation of the P and Z to the city council. Any other discussion? Is there a motion?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Please vote.
Something we can all agree on.
Wait, I'm gonna change my vote.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So somebody didn't vote? Clemmer didn't vote. There we go.
My switch didn't flip.
Light shuffle.
Everybody agreed on that. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for attending tonight.